Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Preference. We are glad you made it. We have some important information to continue sharing with you regarding what is being deemed as predatory companies out there that are potentially taking advantage of veterans. And really, this is kind of an awareness piece. And we're going to read through it, talk about it, give you our 2 cents along the way. My rooster stands in the background, so you'll get to hear him sometimes, which is always fun because he has a loud mouth and he likes to come close to where I am and do that. So with that, let's jump into it here. Hit the thumbs up for us, subscribe, share with a friend, all of that good stuff. We really appreciate it. All right, so the headline here on military.com, this article just came out May 30th of 2024, and we're sharing it with you here today. The headline is, "We must stop predatory companies from scamming veterans seeking disability benefits." And that's an important thing, right? Because we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves. And let's jump into it and get the thoughts rolling along the way. So first, before we start reading too far into it, do you have any thoughts on this at all, Randy, with regard to, this has been in the news, quite frankly, for a good 6 months or so, off and on. Do you have any thoughts that bubble up just right off the top?
Well, I hate to hear the sort of resources that are necessary aren't available to veterans, and they need to go the paid route. They need to hire companies to get, certain things done for them with their VA claim. So that does trouble me a little bit, but there are times when it is necessary. There are times when you need to hire an attorney because your claim is so complex and so screwed up. The only way you can successfully navigate through the VA system is with professional guidance. I can understand that there are a few of those cases out there, but in general, it's a concerning trend in my view. So that's me. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I mean, I have a phobia on doing expense reports, a phobia on doing lots of paperwork. I was digging through some stuff last week because I've recently moved, and I pulled out paperwork from one of my Diddy moves when I ETS'd that I never filed. And so for somebody like me, a paid service could be valuable. And I think the challenge is, because I just hate doing some of that stuff. And I'm actually happy to pay for a valuable service. But you got to know what you're getting into, and you got to be able to understand what value do these folks actually offer. The one that I personally see the most is around resume writing and career stuff. And it just kills me to see people that I know paying the money that they're paying, unless that company is doing more than just helping them write a decent resume, and they have contacts and will get them access to things or to people that they wouldn't have had access to before. And generally speaking, these folks don't. And the people who actually do, you don't have to pay because they make money from the company making the introduction. So a lot of this is just about knowing the things that you are good at, knowing the places where you need to ask for help, understanding how the fee structures work, and making sure that you're going to get good value out of whatever it costs you. Now, we'll get into this. I'm sure a lot of the pitches, in fact, I know a lot of the pitches are, it doesn't cost you anything. That's not always true. So that's hopefully a little bit of a setup, and everybody's excited about talking about this topic with that grandiose explanation of how lazy I am.
Very nice. So, here's the thing, is that when it comes to your VA benefits, and specifically we're talking about your disability compensation benefits, although like Chris pointed out, it could be a whole array of things. Veterans are absolutely a target. Now, just to put things in context here, you have accredited representatives at the Veterans Service Organization level, your DAV, American Legion, all that stuff. Then you have your Veteran Service Officers and Veteran Service Reps who are accredited as well. They work for the county or the state. Then you have your claims agents who are accredited through the VA, and you have attorneys that also function VA. Now, this is really focused on those non-accredited companies that are set up to, that they frame it in, we're going to educate you about your claim, because they're not allowed to file the claim for you because they're not accredited, and that would be illegal. So they just frame it up as, we're going to educate you on your claim, your situation, then you take the ball and you kick it over the you kick it into the goal. So anyway, let's jump into this and see what kind of nuggets we can find and go from there. So I have the article up here, and we'll see. I already know I'm gonna butcher words, so it is what it is. Yeah, it's up so you can read it. All right. So in 1967, I was stationed at a U.S. Army base in Vietnam, one of the primary nods of Operation Ranch Hand. This was the lighthearted name given to the cruel campaign of defoliating large areas of Vietnam with Agent Orange, making it easier for bombers and fighters to set their targets and depriving the local population of food. Almost 60 years later, the soil and groundwater in and around the area remain contaminated with toxic chemicals, making residents ill. Many Vietnam veterans have also become sick. I have 2 medical conditions resulting from my exposure to Agent Orange: cardiac disease and prostate cancer. The Department of Veterans Affairs provides care and compensation for these ailments through their support, though their support requires securing a disability rating, a number from 0 to 100. The higher the number, the more care and compensation a veteran receives. Getting that rating entails navigating a whole host of regulations, evaluations, and paperwork. Thankfully, there is an army of well-trained and accredited service officers who often help veterans like me. Unfortunately, there is now also competing industries of unaccredited for-profit companies, many of which offer sketchy services and astronomical costs. I've used accredited officers for both of my conditions, though in my most recent experience for prostate cancer, I have been inundated by appeals. Really? Okay. So inundated with appeals from shady claims companies. Oh, okay. They're appealing him. I'm thinking VA appeals when I think of appeals. So people reaching out to him, shady claims companies referred to by veterans advocacy groups as claim sharks. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a minute. So this is a gentleman, veteran, sharing his story, and I will tell you what he is implying here. Is some of these conditions are presumptive conditions. Presumptive conditions are easy to win with the VA. So if you have, let's say, ischemic heart disease, you have hypertension, a whole host of cancers, you have diabetes, and you served in a Agent Orange designated area, the VA eliminates the need for a nexus. That makes it much easier. The nexus is the hardest piece to basically create and identify for VA claims. So they remove that, and all you need to do is show that you served there and show that you have the condition, and they will rate you. Now, he's talking about these claim sharks reaching out to him, trying to get his business. Now, here's the thing. Sadly, veterans out there, Vietnam era veterans, so think about the age range of veteran here, are being reached out to by organizations that are going to charge them 6 times the amount of their increase. So let's pretend for 1 second you have some horrible cancer that's Agent Orange related. It's a presumptive condition. All you need to do as a veteran is show the VA that you served in Vietnam or a designated Agent Orange area during a specified time period. I served there, and I have that horrible cancer. If it's active, the VA is going to give you 100%. So let's say that you're married, right? So it's nearly $4,000 per month tax-free. Let's say this is your first claim. Now I'm setting this up because I want your guys' reaction here. So brand new veteran, I didn't do anything with the VA, whatever. You know, I came back from Vietnam and I just wanted nothing to do with the military or the VA. And that's a normal story, right? You away from it all. Now you're up against the fence with this cancer, and you're not sure what to do. You get contacted by one of these for-profit organizations, and they file your presumptive condition. All I need is these couple pieces of information. They file it for you. Bam, you're 100%. $4,000 a month. Most of them will take up to about 6 months of your increase. Well, if you were zero before, nothing, and now you're 100%, $4,000 a month, well, 4 times 6, right? So $24,000 to file that claim for, or to educate, quote unquote, the veteran on that claim. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Chris, let's lead off with you. I really want to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many resources out there to help you that are free and are accredited. One of the questions I have to both of you, as well as to anybody listening to the podcast, is what would stimulate the need to actually leverage one of these organizations. And maybe it's just, hey, I didn't know about it. They called me. They said they could get me money. So I said, okay. I signed the paperwork. I didn't really look at it. I didn't really understand. I was told that it wasn't going to cost me anything, that it would, so this really, the American system of capitalism is a beautiful system. But it's things like this really infuriate me, but it takes two to tango here. And yes, they prey on the people who need the help. And that really pisses me off and makes me want to go, break some knuckles. But at the same time, our veterans are falling for it. And it may be because that's the only people who feel cares about them. Right. Randy, thoughts?
Yeah, you asked a good question. What is the impetus behind why somebody is going to seek these kind of services? And we're using a sad example here, but it's because the person has cancer and they need help. So beyond the money, this is a very serious condition, and it may not be covered by whatever health insurance they have, and they need to get some help through the VA. So as much as money and compensation is a driver for this, in this case, I think it's the condition. You're right. It does take two to tango. I'm bothered by the size and scope of the fees. So Jason's example of, 6X on whatever you get is unreasonable for educating somebody about what their condition is and how to properly get compensated for it. If you stand back and look at the two factors that matter most here, the first is, does the service member have this condition? And I know we talked about Nexus a little bit here, but is it a compensatable condition that they have, a service connected condition? And when did it start and where are they at now? And these people don't really contribute anything to that equation. It's, do you have it? Do you deserve some care and compensation for it? And they're not helping anything other than just a paperwork drill, which frankly says as much about the VA as it does these, sort of sharks that they call that are swirling around. So, more than two to tango in this case. Jason, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, and I think that the problem is education, right? Educating veterans on the services and the avenues in which they can get it. I mean, if you know about accredited representatives, about your local veteran service office, those things, that's one thing. But I will tell you that there is a very large number, I believe, of veterans that just don't really have a clue of how any of it really works. And the VA doesn't do a very good job at really, we'll call it dumbing it down, but they don't really do a good job of going, this is what you need to do. Just making it super Barney style. They don't. It just, everything is so convoluted and nuanced, and it seems very difficult. And in my opinion, the local accredited veteran service officers and reps and all that stuff throughout the different states and the county levels and what have you are severely underfunded. So they're just reactive. They're not out there getting into the community the way that they need to be. They're all just kind of skeleton crews, just being reactive instead of proactive. Now, do I think there's a place for these kind of organizations? Sure. Sure, they're incentivized to get you the highest rating and to help you figure out what you can claim and what you can't. Well, I highly disagree with how much they charge, and I don't think that they should be able to charge really anything at all for a presumptive condition. Not just be a freebie. Here's a coaching session for free. So let's move on in this. Again, this is an op-ed. This is a guy sharing his story and his thoughts on this kind of issue that we have currently going on and where we stand today. So moving on in the story, it says, as things currently stand, the VA is not able to take legal action against unaccredited claim sharks. It can only send cease and desist letters. This is a result of a truly illogical policy that Congress pushed back in 2006. Prior to that, the VA actually had the authority to take legal action. While Congress said that the predatory tactics used by claim sharks are technically illegal, legislators mysteriously removed any penalties. And I will tell you that Congress on both the Senate and the House side are looking into this and pushing different pieces of legislation currently for a whole other video. Let's just move on in here. So since there is no legal consequences for non-compliance, claim sharks across the country are acting with immunity, I guess. Congress is seeking to stop predatory claim sharks through the Guard VA Benefits Act. So that's one of them, mostly by reimposing criminal penalties. Veterans and the broader community should contact their congressional delegation and demand immediate passage of this legislation. So let's stop there for a second. We're in an environment where a veteran may not be able to be seen at this has happened, by the way. I tried to help a veteran this is more than a year ago now. I don't know what it currently is, but up in Washington State, tried to get them connected to the Washington State's Veterans Affairs people and get them to an accredited rep. And you know what they said to me? We're not taking any new clients at this time. Okay, well, when are you? We don't know. Okay, well, that leaves a veteran on their hands. So now, of course, a veteran has the opportunity to file a claim themselves. Cool, you can do that. But some people are scared to do that, like they're going to mess it up. I will tell you now, you can't really mess it up. You can always kind of fix it with appeals and so forth. Obviously, you want to put your best claim forward. So do your research if you're going to do it yourself. But in situations like that, where you have an accredited representative for you in your area that's either A, not taking any new clients, which happened, or, hey, we're out a month and a half, right, before we can even see anybody. What's a veteran to do? They're going to turn and they're going to look for one of these companies to help them with their claim potentially. So do we think that just making it completely illegal is the right move? Because that's what's being called here, reimposing criminal penalties. So your thoughts, Randy, on that?
Well, it's capitalism, and what do you expect? Muddy water fills the cracks here. So I'm gonna throw out an idea to everybody watching and to the both of you. And we'll start with a little bit of a vignette. Go back in time. Think about how much assistance you received when you were going into the military, how much effort the government put into onboarding you and getting you just to that first day where you raise your hand and you take the oath. Think of all the paperwork, think of the medical examinations, think about the skills testing, think about the interview, on and on and on and on, right? So the government went through a very substantial vetting process before they even let you in on day one to take the oath. we don't have a reverse recruiting process, as it were, for people leaving the military. The same care, the same dedication, the same, in-depth, paperwork drill is not occurring as people reverse the military life cycle and move into retirement or separation and on to um, you know, civilian life. There's a bastardization of three huge government, bureaucracies. You've got the Department of Defense waving goodbye to you as you leave. You go through TAP, which is a Department of Labor program, and then you go into the Department of Veterans Affairs ultimately, which is a third bureaucracy. I think we need a reverse recruiting process. Maybe somebody can throw a comment down below and, kind of give me a better name for it, but there needs to be the same level of dedication and attention to detail that those recruiters or the people that brought you into the military bring you out of the military, so we don't have the muddy waters fill in the cracks. And by all means, if you have these conditions, you are entitled to this compensation, and you should be getting it from day one when you leave the military. Chris, I will pass it over to you for your thoughts.
Muddy waters fill in the cracks. I like that one, dude. I'm gonna have to plagiarize the heck out of that one. Onboarding, offboarding. It's funny. Even in the civilian sector, you offboard with a much lighter thing, a much lighter process than you onboard people. You give them the paycheck, and you at best case you have a exit interview, but generally speaking, you're doing most things quick and in a compliant way. But the bar really is relatively low, because now they're thinking about replacing that particular person or doing what they need to run a recruiting process, where we go through a lot more, process and planning. And so it doesn't surprise me that the military is that much different. What is different is it's not convoluted by three bureaucracies. Look, we know this is an issue. Even on the consumerfinance.gov site, they've been posting things ever since last year about these coaches or consultants advertising their ability to assist you when they actually don't have the authority if they're not accredited. Even lawyers can file a civil claim, but if they against the government, like think about Camp Lejeune and all of the gajillions of dollars that was spent advertising that on every medium possible, and how much money the lawyers are going to make from that. And again, that's the way the system works. And hopefully people who were impacted by some of these, whether it be the burn pits or the water at Camp Lejeune, that they do receive the compensation that they deserve. But at the same time, there's a lot of hawks that are vultures that are flying around that because of the obvious, gains that can be made from that. And look, I just went through a VA loan a few months ago, and it's amazing how many emails and letters and texts I get, because it's public information, and and I'm getting a lot of these folks reaching out who are asking, to help me with disability claims and whatnot. So there is an ecosystem out there, and I want to assume that there's a lot of good people who are trying to help veterans and make a buck or make a living while doing it. But we all know that how hawkish some of these organizations can get, and how much how many bad actors there are in that ecosystem. And this is a place where, and thank you for that story, Jason, because it helped answer, that question of, well, why would somebody, when there's all these free resources out there, why would somebody turn to one of these organizations? And they've either hit a brick wall with going through the proper routes, and they get to the point where they say, what the heck? Like, I'm not right now, I'm positioned to get nothing. At least, even if I have to pay, I'll get something. And it just, you have to assume that these folks aren't all in it for your best interest, and do the diligence and ask support of friends and family before you enter into any of these contracts.
Yeah, good point, Chris. And I'll tell you that probably the mindset is, look, like you said, I've hit a dead wall, or I don't even know where to start. It's just like I'm going to an attorney, although they're not attorneys. It's like going to an attorney to help represent you in an automobile accident so you can get something instead of nothing, right? And you're willing to give up that 30% or whatever to go to the attorney out of that award. I will tell you that I'll break it down in my own mind here, the order of precedence. I would first try to work with a free accredited body, right? Whether it's a veteran service officer, veteran service rep, or the veteran service organizations like VFW, American Legion, DAV, so on and so forth. Even going over to Wounded Warrior Project, they have accredited reps as well. That would be my first step. If I can't do that for whatever reason, right? Whatever the reason is that I can't make that happen, then I would, and before all of that, I would educate myself. There's a billion different YouTube channels out there. There's tons of information online. The VA's website is a good resource. Learn and understand kind of the process. Then what I would do, if I couldn't use an accredited body, I would then file the claim myself, doing the best that I could on the VA's website. And if it gets denied, or if it comes back unfavorable, in my opinion, then what I would do is I would file either what's called a higher level review or a supplemental claim. Higher level review is maybe they missed something that I gave them, and you point it out to them so they can see what they may have missed that should warrant your appropriate outcome. A supplemental allows you to add additional evidence, documentation to your case. So maybe you missed something, they called it out, and so now you're going to supply that so they can award you in your favor. If that falls apart, then I would do one of two things. I would either contact a claims agent or attorney, or I would feel confident enough to file a appeal through the Board of Appeals, the Board of Veterans Appeals. And that's the route that I would go. If that fell apart, then maybe I would go to one of these companies, right? Because the cost is just unbelievably expensive. So again, I'm going to double tap on what you said, Chris, real quick. You said that you filed, or you did your VA loan, you got identified as a veteran, you started receiving stuff in the mail or text or whatever. These organizations, because they're for profit, have the ability to be proactive, right? So they're looking. Imagine if a local veteran service officer had enough personnel and enough money to where they could do that and reach out to everybody and go, hey, we're here, come see us, right? But they're not. So they won't, because they don't have the manpower, the bandwidth, the money, any of that. So that's the big difference. And I think that if Congress really wants to get it right, it's not about eliminating these companies. It's about funding the appropriate resources. So I saw you bounced off or came off mute for a second. Randy, did you want to add anything to that before I move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one little important detail that I think the viewer should keep in mind. You went through a really good ladder there, Jason, of kind of how you would approach this. You know, you started with the VSO piece, and then, hey, if nothing else, you can get it yourself, get the paperwork done yourself, and then tweak it later through the various, processes that are out there. I wanted to add, if you're having trouble connecting with a VSO, somebody that's really good, and you might need to try a couple to make sure you gel with that person and you can work with them, get an intent to file done. File your intent to file, and that's going to start your clock. So Jason's talking about this, kind of triaging, how do we get through this? And if I can't get the help from this person, then maybe I tackle it myself. In any case, if you go through the intent to file process, it's short, sweet. You can call the VA and start it. You can write fill out their form and mail it in. You can do it online. There's a bunch of different options. It backdates your claim to that point in time. So I just didn't want the audience to lose sight of that. Everything Jason said is true, but get the intent to file done, because if nothing else, and if you receive some compensation, it'll be backdated. That's all I wanted to throw in there, Jason.
Yeah,
that's a great ad and a great catch, Randy. Thank you so much. Very important. Chris, did you want to add something?
Yeah, it besides going to the VSOs or reaching out online, a lot of counties have stand downs quite frequently that are not only meant to give veterans the assistance they need in the moment, whether it be dental care or eye exams, hearing exams. It's also a place where you can meet up with the VSOs on both fronts, the veteran service organizations and the veteran service officers. And so there are places that you could go talk to people in person to get real good information.
Great point, Chris. So the couple great ads there. The intent to file, absolutely. If you're even thinking about going down the road of filing a VA claim, file that intent to file. If you don't know where to find resources, Google search them and see if there's anything near you. And if there's ever a veteran stand down near you, they're typically targeting homeless veterans, but all the services are there for you, and you should just show up and meet people and get. I'm going to use the word Rolodex. I get it. That's old, but you could build that kind of catalog, we'll say, of people.
It's an
in
analog
industry.
CRM.
And Chris is laughing. Yes, there you go. That's so fancy, Chris. So that way you have these contacts, right? And that's what it's about, is knowing who you need to contact for what. And I'll tell you what, be that resource for other veterans, right? If you find this stuff out, and then you could share it with your sphere of influence. All right, let's move on in this and see what else this guy is talking about that we can kind of unpack. So he moves on to say, the nation cannot allow predatory companies to take advantage of those who answer the call to duty. I secured my rating for cardiac disease nearly a decade ago, before these unaccredited, quote unquote, claim sharks had really emerged. The path to my rating began after I experienced a heart attack and underwent emergency quadruple bypass surgery. Unfortunately, I had a potentially fatal allergic reaction to one of the drugs I was given, which caused me to be kept unconscious for 4 days. Wow. I consequently developed pneumonia, and false diagnosis of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, was entered into my medical record. After the surgery, I contacted my veteran service office to apply for a service-connected rating for cardiac disease. The office employs agents who are trained, tested, and accredited by the VA Office of General Counsel, which is true. Accredited claims. So when you're an accredited representative, you have to update your accreditation. You have to, have kind of continuing education, kind of like a realtor would. And you had to pass a test and all that good stuff. Accredited claim agents undergo background checks. The accredited agents employed by local governments or veterans groups don't charge for their services. Those who do must submit detailed fee agreements to the government to be scrutinized and approved as fair. The office submitted my initial claim, which was approved only for a 10%. This was because of the false diagnosis of COPD, which was cited as the primary factor of my cardiac disease. So I'm going to stop there for a second. So he's really pushing on the fact that, look, there's accredited, everything that we've talked about, accredited representatives out there for you that can help you. We talked about that a lot. This part where he's talking about only for 10%. Here's the thing. Just because something really bothers you doesn't mean that it's going to be a high rating. The two don't gel like that, right? You could have a back condition, lower lumbar issue that, if you drive for 10 minutes and get out of the car, you're bent over and it takes you forever to stand up straight, right? That might only be a 10% or 20% rating. You could have migraines that you get, 2, 3, 4 times a month, and you could be rated 50%. So it just depends on the specific ailment that you have in comparison to the VA's rating schedule. The great news here is that you can jump into the VA's rating schedule or schedule of ratings. You can Google search it. VA, either way, it'll show up. So whether you say schedule of ratings or rating schedule for that condition, you'll either go to the VA's website and be able to read it there, which I suggest because it's from the horse's mouth. Otherwise, you could risk getting dated information. But all of the attorneys that do veterans claims, the attorneys, okay, not the claim sharky people, but the actual attorneys that do claims, they'll have that information on their website too for the different criteria. So if you have these signs and symptoms, you're rated this. If you have these signs and symptoms, you're rated this, and so on and so forth. So you can know exactly what you should be rated. You're the patient. In most cases, you'll be able to read it and understand, I meet all of that criteria or I don't. And you'll see the associated rating. Now, as far as the accreditation and all of that stuff is concerned, very important for folks. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add to the whole rating aspect that he talked about, Randy?
Yeah, I mean, it does in a lot of ways sanitize the process when you go through a VSO that's either a county employee or maybe a state employee or with one of the veteran service groups, VFW or whatever, because as the article points out correctly, they're not getting paid for their services. And there are, I think, limited circumstances where VSOs can get paid, but those fees have to be scrutinized. They have to be disclosed to the VA. So, let's say you're a county employee, you have a passion for veterans causes, and you work as a VSO, you're getting your paycheck through the county. You're not incentivized in any sort of way to kind of jerk a veteran around like we're talking about here in this article. So, back to Jason's, sort of triaging, how do we get through this process with the lay of the land currently? It does start with a good VSO. I've said this earlier, and I'll say it again. Not all VSOs are created equal. Just because you get along with one realtor when you sell a house doesn't mean you're going to get along with another one. So you might need to just kind of try them out, ask a few questions, see if you jive with their personality. They all should have about the same level of training, but that doesn't, exclude the human element. You're going to want to make sure you get along with this person because you're going to work with them for a little while, and it's going to have a big impact on your life. Those are my thoughts. I'll kick it down to you, Chris, for yours.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. If anybody's watched these podcasts already, they know that Randy and Jason are much more the experts on pretty much most topics. But one of the things that I did find that it was kind of lumped into the conversation here was about accreditation. And there is a site on the VA that you can actually go. It's va.gov/OGC Oscar. What is G again? Golf, Oscar Golf Charlie /apps/accreditation / all you got to do is go to the VA website and type accreditation search. You can actually search to see if these organizations are accredited. I can only imagine that the ones who aren't have a story or say that they have authorization and that they partner all of the time. What really matters is if they're accredited. So before you do anything, make sure you do an accreditation search on the va.gov website.
Yeah, good call. So, here's the great thing about this kind of the trifecta of us is that we all have different experiences in life. We're all veterans, and it's nice to be able to see it from a different viewpoint. And the questions that come up in that type of stuff and looking at it through a fresh lens, if it's something that we don't know about, where one of us has a little more knowledge than the other, is really, it's good for all of us to have this perspective. So moving on, I'm just going to kind of try to go through this as quickly as I can to see if we can dig a little deeper here. So he's telling his story, obviously, in depth because he's a little bit passionate about the whole process. And so let's see what he says here. My accredited officer assisted in helping me object to the diagnosis of COPD. As part of the appeals process, I was referred for a more comprehensive medical examination. My accredited officer also advised me to obtain a statement from the pulmonologist who examined me post-surgery and found no evidence of COPD. Here's something interesting I just want to throw in there. If the VA screws up and assigns you a rating for something that you don't have, for example, let's say that that you went in for a bad right knee, okay, but they rated you for a bad left knee. If 20 years goes by and you've been rated for the wrong knee the whole time, the VA cannot sever that disability rating, even if they realize they screwed up. But it's a 20-year thing, so you got to wait 20 years, right? Um, but so if they screw up, they wash their hands of it after 20 years. So just want to throw that out there. So submission of the evidence combined with the findings of the second medical examination resulted in the VA reversing its initial decision and awarding me 60%. This is for that heart condition, if you remember. This was far from an easy process, but I was deeply grateful to have a free expert assistance in the form of my county service officer. A decade later in January, I had prostate surgery. Tissue biopsies revealed the presence of cancer. I returned to the same county veteran service office, which prepared and filed a claim for service-connected disability based on exposure to Agent Orange. Again, talking about presumptive condition, much easier than a standard condition. The three things that you need, just to take a moment to share this, is in order to have a successful claim with the VA, you have to have time in service. You have to have a diagnosed condition. You self-diagnosing doesn't mean anything. A diagnosed condition. That diagnosed condition must be chronic in nature or have some sort of residual effect, something ongoing, something like an ongoing problem. The third thing is that nexus, the link between the condition and your time in service. So either that it manifested during your time in service or as a result of your time in service. Now, the VA has presumptive conditions for burn pits, for Agent Orange, for bad water like at Camp Lejeune, a whole list of conditions where they say if you have this and you served in these areas, we're just going to presume that it's because of that. The burden of proving that it has to do with either manifesting or as a result of your time in service are waived. We presume that it is. So that's what he's talking about here. So moving on, and he actually mentions it. So my service connection for prostate cancer is currently under review by the VA, but like cardiac disease, it is a presumptive disability from exposure to Agent Orange. An award of service connection for prostate cancer is expected soon. According to VA, a decision letter is being prepared. So this tells me that he's utilizing the va.gov site where he can log on and see the progress of his claim. So he's really diving deep into his experience. Let's do a couple more paragraphs and then we'll kick it around for a minute. Ever since I applied for service-connected rating for prostate cancer, I have been inundated with, this is like Chris, inundated by ads from these claim sharks. They are not required to adhere to the same professional and ethical standards as accredited representatives, and many are poorly trained to help a veteran navigate the intricate rules and regulations concerning veterans' benefits. Claim sharks are for-profit companies that charge thousands for services that are provided for free by a county veteran service office and veteran service organizations, such as the Veterans of. I love that he distinguished the two. I'm just, because so many people don't. And veteran service organizations such as Veterans of Foreign Wars, Disabled American Veterans, the American Legion. The assistance offered by accredited VSOs is of higher quality than what's offered by claim sharks. That's because their mission is to help veterans, not use them to turn a tidy profit. I might as well just finish it off, the last little paragraph here, and then we'll dissect it a little bit. The ads from claim sharks appear daily in my mail messages and on my Facebook account. They falsely claim to offer expedited services and suggest it is possible to easily achieve an award of 100% disability. In fact, there are no shortcuts to the VA disability process. I agree. I have my own thoughts, but I'm going to kick it to you, Randy, and then we'll go from there.
So complex case. You know, I hate to hear what this individual is going through, but it's a complex case. He did tell the truth. I mean, going through a VSO is often the best way to do it. Let's talk really quick about when an attorney is needed, because this is a more complex case that this person's describing. Sometimes you may have a claim, and your claim is so complex that you need legal representation to get through the process. That does not, in my opinion, fall into this category of, VA sharks that are out there. There are attorneys that are accredited to be, a VA accredited attorney. So they have expertise in veterans matters, and they can help represent you as you go through the process. So first question, when you're talking about these complex cases and you're thinking about engaging with a lawyer, is ask them, hey, are you a VA accredited attorney? Probably second common sense question that I would ask them is, how long have you been doing this? How long have you been practicing veterans law? And can you, provide me with any sort of credentials or referrals or anything like that might help me understand your professional history a little bit better? And then ask them, are you admitted to practice before the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims? Because it may come to that. So you're going to want to know if they're able to practice in that venue. So I guess that's where I'm at, Jason. I didn't want to kind of foot stomp this. I just wanted to point out that there is a difference between, claim sharks that are out there and then actual attorneys that, are specialized in this and representing you in a legal matter that you are claiming against the VA. So pass it over to you, Chris, for your thoughts.
Yeah, nothing much to add. Just remember that you could validate the accreditation. I've said that before. But don't, depending upon where you're watching this thing, don't want you to miss out that you could go to va.gov and do a search on accreditation. There's also, just something that if anybody has used, if anybody in the community, listener, has used one of these services, we'd like to hear about it. Like a good story, like, can they add value that others can't? I mean, there might be some services that are out there that are valuable. It would also be interested to hear from some of you who might be working for those services, because maybe there are, outlier situations where these services are the right thing to do. I can't really see any at this point, but look, this is all about sharing information and stories. And if you got them, then share them.